It's time to get ready. It's time to get ready. It's time to get ready. Time to get ready. Time to get ready. Whoa. Wake up. It's time to get ready. It's time to get ready. It's time to get ready. Time to get ready. Time to get ready. Whoa. Up for another day. Get out the bed and I stretch before I wash my face. To survive, about to take him to another place. And she said I'm Superman to a Lois Lane. Side of game, no wise enough, they need to clear the way. You gotta go, but to achieve it, you gon' need some faith.
After a long time away, boy, not even on Instagram Live we can do episodes now. Your boy is very busy, Roll. Your boy is very busy. He has to wake up and get ready every single day of his life, or until graduation. Because your boy is grad school.
Work hard, grind harder.
But we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We're not only back on Spotify, but we are back on YouTube. It's so great to finally be back on this channel. We've had so many difficulties with uploading these episodes, the length, everything. But we're back on all our platforms. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Off The Bench Pod. As always, we are sponsored by Diplomacy Clothing. Our lovely friend Kyle Miller, who's the CEO, the designer of Diplomacy Clothing, has always been supporting the podcast since the very beginning. Maybe go give them a follow at Diplomacy Clothing on Instagram. Roll. Let me hear you talk about NASCAR, because this has been a hot minute since we talked NASCAR.
It's been a hot minute. And last time I think we talked NASCAR at all, I was venting almost about how Hendrick Motorsports needs to step their game up. They were once the superior motorsports organization, and they have fallen to be irrelevant. Well, I'm happy to announce that they are no longer irrelevant. And I can't say Chase Elliott just yet, but between Kyle Larson, who was suspended all last year for the racial slur, and William Byron, shockingly enough, they have accounted for wins already. And Kyle Larson, dare I say, has probably been the best car throughout the season so far. So, I mean, I've been impressed by Hendrick Motorsports, but I've also been shocked to see Stewart Haas, which has been, like, in the last 3 years, we'll go back to the last 3 years, has been a top 3 organization in NASCAR, who are currently winless. Mm-hmm. And the only car that even semi-looks any type of competitive is Kevin Harvick, and that's to be expected because he's consistently one of the best drivers in NASCAR. You expect Kevin Harvick to win, but they got a lot of young guys, George. So I don't want to like rain on the parade. You got Cole Custer; he's still young, although he won a race last year. Circumstances were, and not like he had the best car at race. He pulled off a gutsy move, made it 4 wide, and ended up working for the advantage. But nobody's gonna mistake him for having the best car. So I don't expect Cole Custer to go out there and light it up. They also got young Chase Briscoe coming up from the Xfinity Series, so he's in his rookie year. And then they have Eric Almirola, who's a veteran, but not, Eric Almirola is that guy who can win one race a year, and you won't be shocked by him winning the race, but then you'll be like, he'll probably won't win again, but he'll be consistently top 10. He hasn't been that easy for it. So it's been kind of shocking to watch Stewart Haas struggle mightily coming out the gate. It's been basically, in my opinion, Hendrick Motorsports versus Penske. Those seem to be the top 2 organizations. Even Joe Gibbs, Alton Martin, has not looked nearly as impressive as Christopher Bell. I can't. Christopher Bell hasn't won 2 for Joe Gibbs. They haven't looked out. We haven't seen Kyle Busch anger the fans the way Kyle Busch does and go out there and win races and bow and, do Kyle Busch antics. He's not doing that. In fact, he's cursing out his crew chief, which he normally does, but he's not winning, so it's taking to get used to Kyle Busch not even. It's still early in the NASCAR season. I've been with the 750 horsepower package that we all hate. It's actually produced a lot of good racing so far. So I'll rate the season stuff for George still early, but the season has been like an egg. I've been enjoying this race. I'm even tuning into, believe it or not, the Truck Series. And not because Haley Deegan, the young 18-year-old prospect, everybody's like, oh, God, look, Haley Deegan is going to be the first female NASCAR driver to do anything. No.
but because the racing is actually competitive now, and it's no longer the trucks are racing, and let me turn this off. It's the package is. I don't know if teams are just now starting to find the package out. Goodyear producing tires that not making the car fall off drastically. Obviously, some of the worn out tracks, or like California, the Richmonds, where the racetrack surface is a little bit older, tires don't last nearly as long. Those not in Goodyear about those tracks, but we want to see the tracks that are freshly paved, produce good races. That's what it's been so far. So I'll give the season an A thus far. It is not because Hendrick Motorsports, my favorite motorsports team in all NASCAR, is actually looking good. Not because of that, I promise you. It's a bonus. It's a bonus. Trust me. It doesn't hurt. But
it's not solely the one I think. It's just a bit of a season.
Makes me a little sad that my boy is Kyle Busch is no longer the same man that really got me slightly interested into NASCAR. It sucks to see your heroes grow old.
oh my God!
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. It's okay. Basketball news, though. Not only did the trade deadline feature not that many big trades, but it gave us a lot of buyout stuff. But Space Jam 2 came out, but we're not going to talk about that Space Jam 2 trailer where Damian Lillard is a robot. I want to talk about that LaMarcus Aldridge situation, because for weeks leading into the trade deadline, it was reported that Aldridge, who's, mind you, 35, but can still ball, and was balling with the Spurs until both him and Popovich were like, this isn't working. This marriage is not going to last. I want out. And for weeks, the Heat were linked to LaMarcus Aldridge. And they were linked to James Harden before he got moved to Brooklyn. And it was everyone was pretty much just, it's a matter of when, not if, with the Heat. And LaMarcus Aldridge just does a 360, fools everyone, and signs with the Nets because they have the, quote, best chance to win a championship, which makes sense since they have KD, they have Kyrie, they have Harden. So makes sense, but damn, not only do the Nets have that big three, but they also signed Blake Griffin. And now they add LaMarcus Aldridge to that mix. And this is looking like an NBA 2K type deal where you turn off the salary cap and you can I remember when we used to play 2K, we adjusted LeBron's salary where he made $1 million and we could bring in all these guys to the roster. That's what it feels like with the Nets right now, because Aldridge is barely making $1 million on the veterans minimum. And so is Blake Griffin. So this is, and the thing that a lot of people are saying is that LeBron did the same thing with the Heat, which, yes, in a sense he did. But this is Ray Allen like a year before retirement. This is a lot of veteran. I mean, they had Eddie Curry on the roster. There's no comparison. This is LaMarcus Aldridge still towards the end of his peak, but he's still in his peak.
Yeah. Are we comparing Aldridge to Shane Battier? Is that what we're doing?
And I know everyone likes to bash LeBron because he had a whole concert and said not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6.
Yeah.
But the thing is, KD, I think the problem with the Nets is that KD bashed the Heat when he was on the Thunder about 10 years ago. He said, oh, everyone wants to play for the Lakers and the Heat now. Well, where's the competition gone? And now all of a sudden, there is no competition. He's in the East. He could have easily won the East with just him and Kyrie. But then they forced the Harden trade, which is okay. You gave up your whole young core and your bench for Harden. So it's like, all right, you have a big three now. We're back to the big three era. And automatically they were saying, okay, well, now they're not favorites to make it to the finals. Now they're favorites to win the finals and win the chip. And they keep adding all this talent, and it's just, who are you afraid of? Because you can beat the Sixers. It'll be tough. It was tough beforehand.
Thank you. That's what I'm going to say. That's the one team that I was stamping on. Like, okay, let's not, because I'm gonna let you finish, Lord, but I got a lot to say. So I'm gonna let you finish.
I mean, I'm just saying that looking at both conferences, really, the Nets they demolished. They're going to demolish the Bucks. Like the Bucks saying no chance. They just gave Jrue Holiday a 4-year, $160 million extension. Good for Jrue Holiday for securing the bag, but you're not winning a chip in Milwaukee. I'm sorry, you're not. The Sixers have Joel Embiid, who can pretty much attack everything inside the paint, especially if D'Antoni likes to go small ball and put Aldridge or Blake at the center position. And technically they're bigs, but they're not going to defend real well, not against Embiid, I don't think. So the only X factor is Ben Simmons, really. We've talked about him plenty on our Instagram live sessions on how Ben Simmons is basically the cheap man's Giannis, who doesn't like to shoot from the perimeter. And then on the West, it's the Lakers, really, that everyone's expecting to make it to the finals once LeBron's healthy and Anthony Davis is healthy and Drummond is healthy now. And outside of the Lakers, the Clippers are struggling. PG-13 isn't the same player. Now he's hurt. Kawhi hasn't been the same player since he left Toronto. Utah surprised the world, but you're not going to expect them to make it a valiant effort against the Brooklyn Nets. Phoenix is still, I think, a ways away. They're just trying to get into the playoffs to show Devin Booker his talent. They're competitive, but really, like, where's the competition for the Nets? There is none. Every matchup they have a big five at this point. So you can go ahead. I'm done. You can go ahead.
I think he is the peak. I think he's going to address this. At some point in time, he's going to address all this, like, manipulative, buyout situations where nothing gets done. No, like, he's going to find a way. I don't know how he's going to do it. Let me try to fix it. I got glare. I'm sorry, guys. I noticed that, but he's going to fix this, George. He knows this is not good for the league. This is not healthy, and as far as I'm concerned, I don't care what happens at the end of the season. If the Brooklyn Nets wins this championship, Kevin Durant, in my mind, will still be ringless. I don't care what you try to tell me. Well, Roland, he was the best person on that Warriors team. You're absolutely right. He was. You're right. How difficult is your job? Like, Roland, he stepped up in crunch time against the Cleveland Cavaliers and helped them win those championships. Listen, the fact that those were even close games to begin with lets you know how good LeBron James is. Because they had no business, I repeat, no business being in any type of a game with the three-headed monster, Klay Thompson. I'll just put it like this. I'll put it like this. And you tell me what you think, George, and everyone listening, let me know what you guys think as well. If Kevin Durant and LeBron James were to swap on that team, if you would have sent Kevin Durant to the Cleveland Cavaliers, with that team LeBron James had, and you put LeBron on that Warriors team, it has Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. What do you think happens? Do you think it's that close, or do you think they run away with it? So all this Kevin Durant is as good as LeBron James. Stop it. I don't know. Stop it. I don't want to hear no business. I don't. The only thing you're selling me on is Kevin Durant I think Kevin Durant is the best scorer of all time. Yeah. I think he's as great as the scorer that's ever been on the basketball court. I'll admit to that. But his 2 rings right now were with that loaded Warriors team. So, and now he's just assembled what you just deemed to be a big five. Like, Roland, Blake Griffin ain't the same player. Listen, you remember when that whole I haven't dunked in 2 years? Hold on, I haven't dunked in 2 years. What does he do? The very first game with Brooklyn, dunks the ball. Marcus Aldridge, he's only having 12 points with the Spurs. What does he do? Go for like 15, 16 points in his debut. Like,
that's what infuriates me. Is because everyone says, Blake Griffin, he's a scrub now. No, sir. The Pistons were a terrible team. People forget that they sneaked into the playoffs when they traded for Blake Griffin. They sneaked in. That team was not built for a Griffin and Drummond tandem. That was randomly put together. And then the LaMarcus Aldridge, before this season, the past few years when Aldridge was in San Antonio, the Spurs were in contention for the playoffs. They were always that sneaky team, that dark horse.
Yes.
Even with Aldridge. The reason this year he fell off when San Antonio is because him and Popovich basically said, this is not working out. We're not going to resign you long term.
Yes, they came to a mutual agreement.
It was a mutual agreement, and LaMarcus Aldridge just said, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore. DeMar DeRozan, this is your team now.
Thank you. And where I was going with that, George, is with Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, it's easy. Look at James Harden. James Harden. So I'll even use James Harden. You remember the first, 12 games of the season when James Harden was a Houston Rocket? He looked fat, out of shape, didn't look like he knew what he was doing out there. Suddenly went to Brooklyn with Slim, scoring 36 points. And then it was like, what just happened?
Yep.
You can manipulate these things, guys.
Yeah.
I want you to understand, you can manipulate this. You can manipulate your situation. In Blake Griffin's situation, he wasn't playing in Detroit. There's a reason why they're mad. He wasn't playing. I guarantee you, if Blake Griffin were playing, they would have been on the cusp of playoffs. They would have been on the cusp. They probably wouldn't have been 8th or nothing right now, but they would have been a lot better if Blake Griffin actually been playing instead of sitting on the bench.
And it speaks more to Stan Van Gundy's coaching ability, to Dwayne Casey's coaching ability, because Stan Van Gundy made it to the finals with Dwight Howard as a centerpiece. Dwayne Casey, he made it to the Eastern Conference Finals against LeBron, but would always get swept or lose in 5 games. So it just shows how limited they are. And Blake Griffin was aware of the situation in Detroit, knowing, we're not going to be more than a 7-6 seed at best.
At best.
At best. Drummond is pretty much taking my best shots inside the rim. So this isn't working out as well. And then,
no. And you went from Los Angeles to Detroit.
Yeah.
I was happy about that.
And Griffin, he was hurt, but case can be made that he could have come back sooner than his injuries, and he pretty much took a lot of time off in Detroit just to make sure he's 100% for an opportunity like this for Brooklyn to go back and win a chip.
And now to address Brooklyn, I don't blame Marks for doing what he's doing in Brooklyn. Listen. If I'm in a situation inside LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, James Harden, I'll do it too. Even though I ain't saying he's wrong. I'm not saying, well, maybe you should make the league fair. No. If you can get people, you're a genius for doing so. But the problem is, George, let me address to where I do think some of these signings have been a little bit overhyped. Now, justified. But Blake Griffin or LaMarcus Aldridge solves the number one concern I had about them, which was rim protection. Yeah. It solves none of them. Does it help them score? Sure, but they couldn't do that. That wasn't something that I was worried about them doing scoring. I was worried about them rim protecting. Who's going to rim protect? When they're facing the Philadelphia 76ers, the Joel Embiid fouled out whoever, there's DeAndre Jordan, and they try to play Kevin Durant on him, and he's getting bodied to it. These are the stuff that I'm like, you need to address. But they just say, hey, we're going to add more firepower, which can work. But here's the reason why, George, I don't think they would beat the Los Angeles Lakers if they were to meet. Is because, for the point I kind of just made earlier, Kevin Durant was playing with Steph Curry, arguably the best shooter of all time. Yeah. That's not arguable. He's the best shooter of all time. Klay Thompson, who is arguably the second best shooter of all time. Yeah. And took LeBron to 6 games. You mean to tell me that was LeBron having Richard Jefferson and people like that on his team? Yeah. You mean so what am I going to continue to preach? Brooklyn doesn't have no inside threat. Now, what's going to happen when Andre Drummond, who might be, George, here's a hot take for it. Andre Drummond might be as good as a rebounder as there ever been in the NBA.
I would say he's one of the best rebounders in the game right now.
For sure. 100%. I think he's the best rebounder in the game right now. Yeah. I don't think he's second. I think he's the best. And if we're talking all time, he's top 5 in my opinion. Yeah. Andre Drummond, for those who do not watch, he's for Detroit. You may not watch Detroit basketball, or you may not look at stats, analytics or do that. But Drummond, at one point, George, it was about a year ago, he was averaging 15.8 rebounds a game.
Yep. Yeah.
This man is a rebound machine. And you know what I love most about those? They're offensive rebounds. So he's giving LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Dennis Schroeder, Caldwell Pope, Alex Kuzma, these guys, multiple opportunities to score. Multiple times. And he's going to defend the rim on the other end. And you know what? If he needs a rest, Anthony Davis, you can step in. And you know what? Now that strain on Marc Gasol needing to be that everyday center is gone. Because he can now just come off the bench, where I think he's most likely going to thrive off the bench, play sparring minutes, and be everything that Andre Drummond is not. But when you take Andre Drummond out the game, you're now getting a better offensive threat in Marc Gasol with his ability to shoot the ball, play make.
Yeah.
And he can still be tough around the rim. Let's not forget, Marc Gasol is a former Defensive Player of the Year in his own right.
Yep.
So I think the Lakers are constructed to beat the Brooklyn Nets because they'll do everything that the Brooklyn Nets struggle with is what the Lakers do great.
Yeah.
They're going to attack the rim.
And the fit with Andre Drummond and the Lakers is perfect almost. If it's not perfect, it's damn near perfect because now you just plug Drummond at the 5, Anthony Davis goes natural position at the 4, LeBron at the 3. When all three of them are healthy, and now you have KCP at the 2, whoever's running the 1 or not point forward.
Dennis Schroeder. You did
Dennis Schroeder, but he's really more of just a combo guard, really. Just
a combo guard, yeah.
And the ball's going to be in LeBron's hands 90% of the time, but that's going to be tough to beat. And the only reason the Lakers are so down low in the standings right now is because everyone's hurt.
And there's still 4. And there's still 4.
And I don't blame the Lakers for going after Andre Drummond too much because they are hurt. There's injury. There was a need to be filled.
That's a position of need. Yeah, that's a position of need.
Yeah, there was a need to be filled, so they said, okay, there's the best available center is Andre Drummond. The Cleveland Cavaliers are asking too much for a trade. Let's wait until they buy him out when they inevitably don't get any offers that they want.
Nobody was willing to pay that price tag.
No.
You have to understand, 1, what the price tag to get on Andre Drummond was, and then 2, the salary cap that would keep moving.
Yeah.
It was a double negative. Nobody wanted to take that on. From what I understand is once Orlando moved Vucevic to Chicago, that they were in the market.
Yeah.
But they also did not want, if they just traded a center with a huge cap, they didn't want to.
Wow, they bring it back, yeah.
Yeah, to bring in Andre Drummond, who's less of the offensive player that Vucevic is. And so it's like, it was one of those tricky situations. Now you hit on the Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
The Clippers also made a signing of their own, George. They also got Rajon Rondo from
Atlanta. Now that's a confusing move because they traded Lou Williams for Rondo.
Yes.
And Lou Williams, he's the back-to-back 6th Man of the Year. He's
having a down year,
the bench.
Having a down year,
but I feel like and now they're climbing up those standings. They're around, I think, the 6th or 7th seed right now. They were out of it. They were out of it just before the deadline. Mm-hmm. And there was looking like this whole offseason of signings with Danilo Gallinari. I believe who was the center that used to be on Houston that they signed? I'm trying to remember. Clint Capella. It was all these huge signings that Atlanta made to help Trae Young, and they were out of the playoff race. They were even out of the play-in tournament. So they needed a move like Lou Williams to bring that spark off.
And Trae Young is stepping up. Yeah, and Trae Young is stepping up big too.
But I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is going to help the Clippers' needs for Rondo. Like what does Rondo bring to the table?
I think it does, George, and hear me out. What they lacked last year, in my opinion, was that point guard. The guy to get them into their sets. The guy who, under duress, will be calm. And we've seen that when he was on the Lakers in the postseason.
Yeah.
He got the Lakers into their sets. He was obviously great defensively. And it's not what Rondo's going to do for you in the regular season. It's what Rondo's going to do for you in the postseason. The Clippers did this move understanding that they're going to be in the postseason. And if they're going to have any hopes of keeping Kawhi Leonard, you have to make a run here. You're not going to sell Kawhi on hopes and dreams that somehow we'll get this turned around, although our cap is no longer good. And we got PG3 to a locked up deal, and he's not doing much of anything. And we lost Montrezl Harrell, so we don't have him anymore. And we just shipped Lou Williams off. Reggie Jackson's nothing more than a role player at this point. So, you can't sell Kawhi Leonard. Man. You got to sell Kawhi Leonard. We're trying to help you win. This Rajon Rondo move does that. Because Kawhi Leonard watched Rajon Rondo didn't win a ring with LeBron James.
Yeah.
He knows that experience and championship pedigree will help the Clippers. Now, to your point, how much does that help the Clippers? How does this get them over the hump? I don't think so. So I still don't think they're going to be tough enough inside to stop what the Lakers are going to want to do. Now, on the perimeter, they'll give the Lakers some fits because you have a Paul George, a Rajon Rondo, and a Kawhi Leonard. It's going to be tough on on the perimeter. But when LeBron James gets to the paint or they post Morris up with LeBron.
I wouldn't even argue when the Lakers come up. What about Denver? They traded for Aaron Gordon. So now their inside game is a lot better, I think.
Do you think? What did you rate that trade? I'll be real with you. I thought it was a good signing, but Aaron Gordon, for what it is been on Orlando long enough for me to understand that he's good.
Yeah,
but he's not like
I wouldn't say he's a star, but he gives you that extra force.
No, he's a starter.
In the paint. Like he gives you more points in the paint. And
I mean,
he definitely is a good slasher.
I like their 3-4-5 combo with Gordon and Michael Porter and Nikola Jokic, the Joker. Because all three of those they're bigs and they're right. Aaron Gordon being the smallest of them, he's 6'8", 6'9".
Yeah.
They all can pass, they all can finish, and they can all shoot. So that's what I like. I like about the that big three combo. They got a miniature what the Lakers have.
Yeah.
They have a big lineup, but now what their problem is going to be towards defensively.
Yes.
Because I would have loved the deal if they didn't have to get Gary Harris. I wanted them to keep Gary Harris. I'm like, you know what? Gary Harris, I don't know if a lot of people remember, hit some big shots last year for them in the postseason. He had a couple of shitty games, but he had a couple of good games, where you was like, okay, there's Gary Harris. And it was almost like he took some weight off Jamal Murray. Now, essentially, if we're left with rails, Denver can go anywhere, it's going to be Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray's going to have to duplicate what he did last year as well as Joker. They're going to both have to have great postseason. Can it happen? Sure. I'm not going to doubt them. But if they play Utah, I think Utah beats them. I think Utah can beat them. Yeah. And even if they play the Phoenix, I wouldn't be too sure if Phoenix want to beat them.
Wow.
Because the moves were good. It was. But it didn't improve what I thought they needed, which was defense.
Right.
I wanted them to go out and get. Now I know he obviously wasn't on the trade block, but if they could have got a guy like Jaylen Brown from Boston or something, that would have been a move. I would have been like, okay, now we're leaning towards the direction I needed you to take. You need a guy who's going to 3-and-D guy. Not even just a 3-and-D guy, but a guy who's going to really play defense. Aaron Gordon's not that. He's not going to play defense. He's not going to stop nobody. So it doesn't. And Joker's not a rim protector.
No.
So you're worried about now. They're almost like Brooklyn, where they're going to score a bunch of points, but they're not going to stop nobody in doing so. I think it'll come down. If I had to just put it right now and rank the top three in the West, Lakers 1, Utah 2, and Clippers will be 3. I think that would be the 3 best teams coming out because they're the 3 best defensive.
We only have 3-4 weeks left in the season.
Yes.
Left?
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of time.
So when the buckets aren't dropping, George, and you know it. We watch playoff basketball as much as anybody. If the buckets aren't dropping, you have to hang your heart. You're going to have to hang your hat on defense. Yeah. So if Denver's shots ain't hitting, their defense obviously ain't good, so it worries me. Brooklyn, they just have so much firepower that I think they can beat just about anybody.
It really speaks to me the influence of Mike D'Antoni has, because that's pretty much what he tried to do in Phoenix and in some part in Houston, where it took him until the last few years in Houston where they were like, well, we need to start playing defense, so we need to start defending. But for the majority of D'Antoni's coaching career,
first 10 years,
he was all about we're going to outscore you and your defense, our defense is gonna be outscoring you. So you can hit a 3, but we're gonna come right back at you with another 3, and then we're just gonna whatever you do, we're gonna do one better.
It's gonna be a track meet.
Yeah,
It's gonna be a track.
That's what D'Antoni's built his whole coaching career on, just trying to outscore the opponent. But if we could, I want to talk about 2 teams that really they didn't make a big time move outside of one of them. But first, the Boston Celtics. For years, we've heard that the Celtics, they have all this draft capital. They're always in the mix for these big star players. They're in it for Anthony Davis. They're in it for all these big names that are available, and they don't have nothing. And I don't even I think they got Evan Fournier from Orlando.
They did. And he
went
doesn't solve
any of their issues. And they traded away centers. They traded away other bigs. So now they created more problems for themselves. And it's just what is going on in Boston? Because I think as good as Brad Stevens is as a head coach and as great as Jason Tatum is, I don't see Stevens or Danny Ainge staying long after this year, because this is a huge disappointment. Because this isn't just this year. There's multiple years where you had chance after chance after chance with all your draft capital to make a move. This was the legit trust the process, because you're building all these assets. You're waiting for that big move, and you never make it. So I think I think the Boston Celtics are in big trouble.
I don't know if it was smoke screens put out by Dallas, but for everything I was reading, Kristaps Porzingis was on the trade block.
Yeah, I heard the same thing.
I thought to myself, well, damn, this is Boston's chance. Like this, if there's a last-ditch effort, in the NBA, this is it. Because you could probably at this point get Kristaps Porzingis. I'm not saying for cheap, but for you won't have to give up a superstar to get him. You could probably give away just a starter, a draft pick, or something.
You don't have to give up a starter. You have so many first-round draft picks that you can say, here's 2 or 3 that aren't even ours. And maybe here's like a bench player that scores like 15 points a game.
I mean, like if they would have given Enes Kanter in like a first rounder, a first rounder or something, you probably got to build them. Mm-hmm. They just decided to sit on their horses. So it's like it was astonishing. I thought last year, after last year, Brad Stevens was on the hot seat. I was like, you know what? It's getting to the point now where it's almost like the Boston fans can only wait so long.
Mm-hmm. We have a good friend that's a Boston fan, and he's been waiting.
Yeah,
he's been waiting
quite some time. And it's hard to say. Mm-hmm. Like it really is. Maybe they're just banking on maybe they can make a push in free agency to sign somebody. Maybe that's what they're going for. But if that's the case, correct me if I'm wrong, but Jason Tatum's contract is coming up in a year. You're going to have to pay him immediately.
Yeah.
You're not letting him go, so you're going to have to pay him immediately. You got Kemba. You signed Kemba to that Heat still. So he's tying up some money. Jaylen Brown's going to need to get paid. So we're talking about tying up your money in your franchise that you have now. You ain't going to have no money later to get anybody.
And here's the thing. They have a rival in their own division in the New York Knicks who, are now establishing a new culture, a better culture. Everything, it's a brighter future now. Tom Thibodeau is doing a lot of good things. They're probably going to extend Randall after this season. They have multiple draft assets from all these trades they've been making. They have a lot of players on one-year deals. They are definitely going to be in the mix for a guy like Andre Drummond if he ends up not re-signing with the Lakers. You're going to be in talks with Oladipo if he doesn't re-sign with the Heat, which we'll get to later. They're going to be in the mix for a lot of these top players. Maybe Kawhi if they have a first or second round upset with the Clippers. They could all opt out, and the Knicks could be very well in that mix. So now you're getting, and that's just the Knicks. We're not even talking about Brooklyn's next year and the other stars they can attract.
We're not even talking about Masai Ujiri, who in Toronto, is turning around Toronto. He could put together a roster there in Toronto. So you can't even account for Toronto being bad football.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the Boston Celtics holding their ground when the rest of the division's catching up and passing. Toronto has a championship. They have a championship. The Knicks, they're setting the foundation to put themselves in a position to be in championship contention. We talk about Indiana consistently being a great team, greatly ran organization. You know, we're talking about teams, the Philadelphia 76ers, who we just said might come out that division, might come out the conference. You know, like, and the Boston Celtics are just sitting on their hands. I don't know. Now, here's a hot take. Another hot take, George. I'm just dropping a lot of them today. Maybe you have to. Maybe it is time to explore trading Jason Tatum. Maybe it is.
And that because I just looked online. They did sign to a contract extension. But if they are in the play-in tournament, or if they lose in the play-in tournament to a team like the Bulls, the Hornets, then Jason Tatum could definitely be in trade talks. And look who's in New York. Look who's in the Mecca that needs a forward, the New York Knicks. And what do the Knicks have? They have a lot of draft capital that Boston loves to acquire. And they have Kevin Knox. They have a lot of these young players. They just traded Austin Rivers for a second-round pick, essentially. and Austin Rivers Austin Rivers hasn't played since last year.
I'll throw another team in the mix, George, who might be interested in Jason Tatum, but it may work out for both organizations. And we touched on them earlier. Utah. If Boston can get their hands on Rudy Gobert and be like, hey, you know, I'll give you Jason Tatum and this for Rudy Gobert, you know, then that immediately makes Boston that much better because that solves what their big issue is today and not having a big. But then we might be talking about Utah in a different light because now you're comparing a Jason Tatum with a Donovan Mitchell and a Michael Conley Jr. who's having an amazing year for Utah. Amazing year.
Underrated.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people laughed at the thought of him being an all-star. He had better years in his career, sure. You know, but it was well deserved if you watch any of the Utah games. He's having a great year.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe if you're hoping things go south in Dallas, and maybe Porzingis is on a buyout situation where he's just getting bought out somewhere, maybe then Boston's like, okay, maybe now we'll dip our hands for Porzingis. But you know, at that point you run the risk of Kristaps going to go. You know, what's stopping Kristaps Porzingis from going to the Clippers? And that's all is worth. Especially the way today's NBA seems to be. You know, George, I was watching Jacoby and Jalen. Yeah. Jalen brought up the point, as he normally so often does. The time of trade deadline and free agency being the talking point, it might be over. It might now just be who's getting bought out.
Yeah.
Because it seems to be now, this is probably going on this like 4th, 5th year running where big teams have been bought out of contracts and then ended up in championship level of competition. To the extent Anthony Davis didn't get bought out, but he was refusing to play, faking injuries, basically essentially just sabotaging himself in New Orleans to get to where he wants to be.
That's what I think Blake Griffin did in his situation to Detroit.
Yeah. So, and I know on the topic of we were just talking, I know you wanted to probably touch on Victor Oladipo in Miami.
Yeah.
Because
and that's the thing with Miami. This is a Miami team that essentially brought back the same squad that brought them to the finals last year.
Yeah, they ran it back.
They were within 2 games of upsetting the Lakers and winning the chip. They were within 2 games. They only lost in 6 games to the Lakers.
5?
It was 4-2.
Was it?
I believe it was. And I think after that 5th or 6th game,
you might be right.
Butler just was gassed. He was just completely gassed because everyone else was hurt around him, and the pressure.
And they were trapping Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, and the thing is, the Heat. They didn't make a strong enough effort to trade for James Harden, even though he was listed as it was between Brooklyn and Miami. And the Heat weren't happy.
So 1-6.
The Heat weren't happy with the demands that Houston wanted, and you saw how that trade turned out. And then it was just LaMarcus Aldridge, which she talked about, and they settled on Victor Oladipo. But the Heat won't even commit to Oladipo because they want to see how the rest of the season turns out. And how he plays with Jimmy Butler. and they're in the play-in tournament right now, if not the 6th seed. So why is it that we mentioned the buyout where teams are going, players are getting bought out of their contracts, going to Brooklyn, going to LA, going to the Clippers, going to these big title contending teams, and no one's going to Miami. Miami had to trade for Oladipo. They didn't have to wait until a buyout. They had to give up assets to get him to come to Miami Heat. Even though he says he would love to re-sign, who knows if a team like, and I keep mentioning them because they're this year's Brooklyn Nets, and that's the New York Knicks. They're 500. They're right above the play-in tournament. If they completely avoid the play-in tournament, I think that helps their chances of bringing free agents in.
That's what the Knicks did. That's exactly what the Knicks need to aim for. The Knicks don't need to be aiming, well, maybe if we get in the playoff game, anything can happen. That's not what you should be aiming for. You should be aiming for locking yourself into one of those spots that are in the playoffs. Yeah. So once you do that, the free agents like the Kawhi Leonards, the big names who are going to be available this year, will actually take a look at you guys and be like, you know what? Maybe it's not smoke and mirrors. Maybe the Knicks are back.
Here's my prediction. If the Knicks, I predict, because looking at the rest of the East, then if the Knicks finish at a 5 or 4 seed, in one of those two spots, 4 or 5 seed, they can A, have a high chance of upsetting and winning their first round matchup, and B, they can attract a lot more free agents, because this is a team that pretty much has Julius Randle and RJ Barrett and a bunch of no-name veterans that everyone has already washed away and said, we don't want you. And they made it to the 5th seed. They make it to the 5th seed, make it a competitive first-round matchup, maybe make it go to 7. Then I predict 1 or 2 superstar players, like a Kawhi, a Paul George, will go to the Knicks, whether via trade or free agency.
It's possible. Like you just said, they're doing this with essentially just a lot of Julius Randle. He's going to get the hell out because he's the one playing the best. But, RJ's been playing well. Obi hasn't been what we thought he was going to be immediately. But he's coming to his own. Mitchell Robinson is there.
And here's why I mentioned DeAndre Drummond, because Mitchell Robinson, he's out for the season now. And he still shows a lot of promise because of how he's been playing. He just hasn't finished the whole seison. Now you can package him in a couple first-round picks to, say, a Boston who needs a big to develop around the rest of the team, and get that for Jason Tatum. And just say, here's Mitchell Robinson, here's a Kevin Knox along with it, so you have your small forward to replace Jason Tatum, and you can trade that package. Because they have Nerlens Noel, who's been playing the center position, pretty average at best, but he does what he's supposed to do as a backup center.
Now, I know I mentioned at the trade deadline on our last time we recorded on Spotify, I said Zach LaVine would be the perfect fit to go to the New York Knicks because he was doing exactly – he played for Tiz before, and he's having a career year.
Yeah.
Now, I stand by. Yeah. And I agree. I love what Chicago's doing, and I'll dive in. We can dive into Chicago. I love what they're doing there. But the Knicks need to go do what the Clippers just did and go get themselves a point guard. Yeah. And I love Frank, but he's not the answer at that point guard position. They need a bucket getter at that point guard position. A guy who's gonna, get out the way. I got this. And if they had landed Kyrie Irving in the offseason last year, 2 years ago, I feel like the Knicks at this moment right now, we will be talking about in championship contending right now. Yeah. Because that's what they need. Now, I bashed the idea of Russell Westbrook going there last year. I stand by that. I don't think he would have fit the environment. I felt like he would have – I don't think Julius Randle nor RJ Barrett nor any of the people shining right now in the Knicks would have got the opportunity if Russell Westbrook had went there. Just because we know how he plays. Yeah. But I know last year we were animated if the Knicks can get Chris Paul. That would have been exactly what they would have needed. And now I stand by. If they somehow could have got Chris Paul, they would have been a lot better now. Yeah. But I'll give you a name now, George. I'm like, let's look out. Let's see what happens there. And and it's solely off the fact that he's now healthy, seems to be healthy, And two, he's everything that Russell Westbrook isn't, but also athletic, and that's John Wall. I don't know if Houston will hold on to John Wall for much longer, seeing as Houston is not going anywhere. I can see John Wall finding himself in a buyout market. And I can see a team like the Knicks being like, you know what? For cheap, why not? Because he's going to, one, play defense, which Sean Thibodeau preaches, play defense. And two, he's healthy. George, there was no one knocking John Wall's talent. Last time we seen a healthy John Wall, him and Bradley Beal was taking the Cavs to, I think, 6 games. It was a competitive, John Wall can play. And a lot of people forget that because he's a bit, out of sight, out of mind. You forget John Wall's as good as a passing point guard you'll find. Yeah. He is still athletic to this day. After all the horrific knee injuries. Yeah. Still fast. Can get his own bucket. Now, you worry about his shooting. That's where you struggle.
But you're not going to ask him to be the primary ball handler if you're the Knicks. And the thing with the Knicks, too, is that a John Wall would fit perfectly because I think you're looking at the rotation when Tom Thibodeau coaches these games. Ntilikina isn't getting much burn, even though I thought he would thrive under Thibodeau's system. Alfred Payton is being just forced on there, but deep down, Thibodeau knows he wants to start Derrick Rose, but he can't warrant. He can't push that decision with Alfred Payton still on the roster, even though Alfred Payton is by far deteriorating as a point guard. But they do have Emmanuel Quickley, who comes off the bench and is already that spark. He's that. He's
playing well.
You give him a nice pick, and he has that open space. He will shoot it. He will not hesitate. Yeah. And he had many nicknames with whatever other guard was coming off the bench with him. When Austin Rivers was on the Knicks, and they had that nice stretch of 20 games where they were playing really well, they had Quivers, whereas Quickly and Rivers dominating off the bench. And if you can manage to get John Wall on a buyout, or if this offseason you can try to package a trade around Alfred Payton, Frank Ntilikina, a couple more of those draft picks, just a lot of young players that are on one-year deals, because that's what they are. Kevin Knox has 1 year left. Mitchell Robinson has 1 year left. Ntilikina has 1 year. A lot of these young players have one year deals, which Houston will love because they'll be all right. We'll just play next year, and if they fit our system, great. If not, we can ship them out, and we have all these first-round picks. And John Wall would be great because not only will he be starting, he can be that distributor. He can attack the paint, but now you have Julius Randle who can score, and his.
Can you imagine the pick and roll with John Wall and Julius Randle in it? Like that's
how Julius Randle is playing this year.
Boy. Yeah, be tough. Boy. It would be a tough stop.
And then the only question you would have to ask yourself if you're the Knicks is who's going to play the wing. But if you have Wall, you have Wall on his contract. You extend Julius Randle. Now you can say, okay, now all we need is a wing. That shouldn't be too hard to get. You can try to package something to bring a guy like Danilo Gallinari back to New York, who you drafted and brought into the league. Yep. Or you can look at other options at the wing, maybe a Jason Tatum. But that John Wall is really intriguing. And the key is you have to extend Julius Randle at the end of this season. You have to show that loyalty.
Two Kentucky boys.
Yeah.
So
you'll be the New York Wildcats. But and John Wall, really, he's been forgotten about because of his injuries, because he's missed a full season last year and half of the season the year before. He's just been forgotten about, and his talent is still there. And I don't doubt for a minute,
George.
Yeah, I don't doubt for a minute that Houston is possibly going to buy him out because, one, that contract is insanely huge. Unless Houston's going to say, we're going to take half of that contract and pay that off while you take it.
I just pulled up John Wall. He's averaging 20 a game right now. Yeah. Not on great shooting by no stretch of the imagination. But he's on Houston. Yeah. Who is he working with outside of Chris Wood? That's it. He has nothing else there. So you look at the 20 points he's averaging. It's like, okay, he's averaging 7 assists, but we know he's a career 9 assists a game guy, so he's better than that. He still gave you the steals he would average. He's still one of the most athletic point guards. So he blocks a decent amount of shots. He's currently averaging a block a game. Like, the kid, he still could play, George. It's just a matter of, like you said, he was injured. So a lot of people forget, he's only 30 years old.
Yeah.
He's
still there.
not old.
Yeah. He's still got a couple of years, and especially I think he would thrive. I know Thibodeau loves to just push his players to 40 minutes, as close to 40 minutes as he can. Even though it's a 42, even though that's really pushing it for a guy that's been injury prone. But if you have a guy like Quickly that can come off the bench and take that pressure off of John Wall, so he doesn't have to play 40 minutes, maybe he only has to play 30, 35, and then the rest can go to Quickly. That can be really intriguing for the Knicks. And the Bulls, I love what the Bulls did for Vucevic, because one, it shows that we're going to try to make the playoffs with Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
And two, it shows that loyalty to Zach LaVine, saying, no, we're not going to trade you. Forget about all those rumors you've been hearing on ESPN or Bleacher Report, whatever. Like we signed you to this deal, and we brought in the right coach for you, and now we're going to bring this other player that's big to match up well with you when we make that push. And
the Bulls are just coming off that win against the Nets.
Yeah, it did. And I'll honestly, at this point, it's going to take a few more games for them to get the chemistry together. But the good thing is they're still at 9-10 seed. They're still in that play-in tournament conversation. So they can make a push. I mean, if they play the Nets, then have fun, Zach LaVine, because you're playing a lot of garbage time. But if you play like the Sixers or the Bucks, then you might make some noise. Because the Bucks have a lot of weaknesses that Vucevic can exploit. The Sixers have that Ben Simmons wild card where if he has a great game, then the Sixers are going to dominate you. But if he has an okay game or he's not shooting the ball well, then Embiid is going to have a lot of pressure on him, and Embiid doesn't do well when all the pressure is on him.
No.
So I like what the Bulls are doing, because now they're saying no more BS, no more striving for a lottery pick. We're this close to the playoffs. We need to make a push now. And
the guard combo that they have with Kobe White and Zach LaVine is paying dividends, because Kobe White's that first pass versus
Kobe White.
Yeah, and Roy Williams kid, so he's well coached. Mm-hmm. He came right into the league ready to play, and Zach LaVine is only continuing to shoot up the stature of what we thought of him before. Before we were Zach LaVine, good player, but now he's teetering towards the elite. He's entering the elite status. You have a Vucevic, which great move. Now you added the center. They got rid of Wendell Carter. Wendell Carter doesn't look like he was going to emerge to be what they thought he was going to be when they drafted him.
I believe it was Otto Porter they also shipped, and he wasn't fitting what they were trying to do either.
No, he wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't fitting the rebuild either. I think Otto Porter eventually is going to find himself just teetering on a team where he can just figure like he's going to win. But now the next move is get a forward. Now, if you're Chicago, you take the approach you essentially have with Michael Jordan. You have this great scoring guard.
Yeah.
Now you need to with a forward who can he can be versatile. He can we keep bringing up his name, but Jason Tatum will fit perfectly with the Chicago Bulls. He would then now be that other guy to help Zach LaVine when things aren't going Zach LaVine's way. If he's seeing a double team, hey, you can't double team, you got Jason Tatum.
And that's spacing.
Or even
go on.
I was just going to throw another name out there. And I know he just got traded to Denver, but Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon, who played with Vucevic before in Orlando, they could pair to be decent for what they're trying to do there in Chicago. It's just a matter of, if you're Chicago, what are you trying to be? Right now they don't have enough defense, I believe, to compete with the Milwaukees, the Phillies, even Boston. I don't think they defend good enough to compete with. But if they can add a defender to what they already currently have, or even if they can get a JaVale McGee coming off the bench for them to back up Vucevic, who's going to be a good shot blocker for them, good rebounder, high energy guy. These are the players Chicago needs to target, because they already have a core, a small core, but they got a core going with Kobe White and Zach. And now they got Vucevic, so they're building that foundation, George. What the Knicks are doing, building that foundation. What the Utah Jazz did for all those years was build the foundation. And a lot of teams, if you're not like we mentioned them, the Lakers, Miami back in the day, now currently the Nets, where you can buy yourself a superstar. You actually have to build a foundation there.
Yeah.
And all the just listed between the Knicks, Chicago, and Utah. Denver, you can even throw in that mix as well. Has built a foundation. Now, a team we haven't covered and the team we talked about before because of their struggles is Dallas. I really want to see Dallas get Luka another player. Because right now it's Luka 24/7.
Yeah.
Luka do this, Luka do that. He's looking very much like Bradley Beal was when there was not even a Russell Westbrook. It was just Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal, you do all this.
Where do we get you any help? We're gonna get a bunch of guys from the G League, and you'll be good.
Yeah, and you now Kristaps is back, and he's playing decent. He's starting to look like he's starting to get his feet back underneath him. So now I wonder, is it too late for Dallas to recapture that magic they had last year, where they almost upset the Clippers? Because I still think Dallas at their peak, I'm talking Kristaps healthy, playing well, and Luka at his peak playing well, can compete with the Lakers. Not beat the Lakers, but compete with the Lakers. Because Kristaps Porzingis is exactly what they call him, the unicorn. Yep. He does so many things on the basketball court and still shoots the ball well. So it becomes a nightmare when you talk about a guy with Luka who's crafty enough to get to the paint finish with either hand and style, however you want to do it. And he can still hit you with that step back. He catches everybody with. And I'll throw another name out there, George, who wasn't bought out this year, but his name was mentioned, and I'm sure in the offseason we'll see him get moved. It's DeMar DeRozan. Now, DeMar DeRozan doesn't have much value if you're not a team who already has three-point shooting. He needs to go to a team like the Warriors or something, where there's already three-point shooting around him. So he doesn't feel, he's not asked to do that. He's asked to hit those mid-range shots, and I'm on record. He might be the best mid-range shooter there is in the game today. He's a great mid-range shooter, but he cannot shoot the three. So you pair him up with a guy who can, a team who can already shoot the three fairly well. He becomes a valuable piece into everything you're already doing. Yeah. And there was talks of him getting bought out this year. Obviously, didn't happen. I think they were looking to trade him since they bought out LaMarcus Aldridge and they didn't want to give up two veterans for nothing. I think they were more looking to ship him somewhere, but they couldn't, obviously get the deal that they were looking. Where could you see him going? If DeMar DeRozan became available, and I'm talking like no trade needed, like you just have to
a buyout.
Where would you deem him to be the best fit? I said the Warriors. I think that's probably an ideal fit because he's playing with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson.
And Andrew Wiggins really hasn't been the guy that the Warriors were trying to help build. And the only reason he's still there is because of that massive contract Minnesota signed him to, and that had to be the deal with I believe the D'Angelo Russell trade.
That
you had
almost would have paid to keep D'Angelo Russell. Almost would have paid to keep D'Angelo Russell for all this work.
But I like the Warriors fit. You would have to you have to talk to Wiggins and tell him you're coming off the bench because DeRozan is a lot better.
I would just eat the cap hit at this point if I'm the Warriors. Just eat the cap because he's not. If he gets disgruntled, then you're either buying him out anyway or still trying to trade him.
Yeah,
and I think they're already trying to trade him. They're just not finding nothing.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the Bulls could use that three forward at the wing to help out Levine because I think the Bulls are going to need defense and a lot more spacing now. The priority should be defense, but right behind there should be the spacing in the floor for the Levine and Vucevic to do their thing. The Knicks, obviously, I mentioned before, they need a wing more than anything because Reggie Bullock, as much as even though against the lowly Detroit Pistons he scored a season high in 22, he's not going to give that to you every game. I'm sure when they play the Nets on Monday night, because it's April the 4th today. It's the wrong day. It's April 4th today, but when they play the Nets tomorrow, sure, Julius Randle can hold his own against a KD, but that wing position is still going to be occupied by Bullock, Kevin Knox whenever Tom Thibodeau decides to play him. So you need that wing to match up well with Randall. So I feel like the Knicks would be a good option. The Bulls, but now that you mentioned the Warriors, that could be a great fit.
Yeah, it was one of the only teams I thought of that I'm like, oh, what team has spacing already?
Mm-hmm.
That's where if you're DeMar DeRozan, unless you're just want to retire a Toronto Raptor, you go back to Toronto.
Yeah,
it's the only thing that to me would make sense
mm-hmm.
because a lot of people pointed out, oh, he's an LA kid. Maybe he'll go to one of the Los Angeles teams. I don't think either of the Los Angeles teams will want him.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need for the Clippers or the Lakers to bring him in.
LeBron's not going to want to play with another guy who can't shoot the ball.
Yeah.
He's going to want to play with a guy who can shoot the ball. And then Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, although, yeah, they can shoot the ball, they're primarily – they don't want a guy on their team, I don't think, on the perimeter who can't defend.
Yeah.
And DeMar DeRozan's not a defender. Never was a defender. So, I rolled on that. So then I'm like, well, California, the Warriors, if they're interested in getting him, And there's also a lot of talk about James Wiseman. The kid's a rookie.
Yeah.
He's promising. He's showing a lot of potential there for Golden State. But a lot of people are still hesitant, George, that he's going to be their center going forward. A lot of people are saying he could just be being used to build up to a team who eventually decides, hey, I can use that guy. And he gets shipped off somewhere. I seen something that I hope doesn't come true because man would have break the NBA. But I seen something along the lines of it was, and I can't remember who the second player was for the last I think it was Kelly Oubre. But I want to say it was James Wiseman, Kelly Oubre, and a first-round pick or something like that. It was something along those lines for Karl Anthony Towns. And I immediately said, you know what that would do to the NBA? It would essentially be Kevin Durant 0.2.0. It would be so unfair. I can't justify a word for it. Because as good as James Wiseman is and could be, I don't think he'll scratch the potential of Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns. A lot of people, because he played in Minnesota, does not know who this guy is.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell you, he can shoot the ball. He can put it in a bucket. He can put it on the floor. He's a defensive anchor. We're talking about a guy who he's a proven player. Yeah. Everyone who plays in the NBA who has to play in Minnesota knows that's the guy you stop. You stop him. And then for those who don't know, look at what he did to Embiid yesterday when he dunked all over his head. And we're talking about Embiid, who might be the defensive player of the year.
That's a loss too. I think they lost by 10 in that game. But what everyone talks about, not the loss, that cat dunked on Embiid.
Karl Anthony Towns, because he's that hidden gem. You remember when Kevin Garnett was in Minnesota?
Yeah.
Everyone knew he was good, but you didn't know how good he was until he got to Boston, and then you're like, that's Kevin Garnett.
That's a big ticket.
If he goes to the Warriors, holy cow. And that would be nothing for the Warriors. You're giving up James Wiseman, but you're essentially exchanging James Wiseman for Karl Anthony Towns. And then Kelly Oubre. 1,001 Kelly Oubre.
And I can see why they mentioned that, because the Warriors have been trying to move Kelly Oubre. It's the most wide open secret. It's the most well-known secret that the Warriors are trying to move Kelly Oubre. And they were trying to move him at the deadline. They don't want to buy him out. But they're trying to get some return for Kelly Oubre, because that's not turned out too great for them. And to have a guy like Oubre and Wiggins not to pan out well, I think that's where that kind of talk is starting to come up, because this team should be a lot better than what the record says and what their standings are. But those two players, I think, not to shift the blame entirely on two people, but they have the majority of the reason that they're struggling is because of players like Wiggins and Oubre not being as consistent as the Warriors.
Steph Curry's still playing amazing.
Steph Curry is still doing Steph Curry things. The issue is that the surrounding pieces around Steph Curry are not doing Steph Curry things. they're not doing the Golden State Warrior things that are necessary.
They're not even doing Harrison Barnes things at this point.
And look at Harrison Barnes in Sacramento right now. And Sacramento was asking for you to move the world and then some to try to get Harrison Barnes, because not only is he playing well, but now he's a locker room leader. And De'Aaron Fox has responded really well to his leadership. And Tyler Halliburton is responding well to his leadership. So if the Kings weren't as bad as they were, they might actually be a dark horse in the playoffs.
I think what screwed the Kings is just Marvin Bagley being bad. You know, everyone thought Marvin Bagley coming out of Duke was going to have to. I thought I was one of the people. I was like, Marvin Bagley, everything I've seen will lead you to believe he can actually play.
No.
Got to the NBA, and he's just not panning out. But in many situations, it's Sacramento.
Yeah.
You know, when was the last time Sacramento made playoffs? Yet alone was even good. You know, so I mean. De'Aaron Fox, kudos to the guy for signing that extension. Because I would have been on the first thing out of there.
And I think that in the end, Luke Walton might get fired. There is a high chance Luke Walton's going to get fired at the end of this year. But
do you blame Luke Walton? Is he the reason why they're that bad?
I mean, the coach is always the first to go. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
And he had a lot of promise when he was coaching. He was the interim coach for the Warriors. And then he had that stint with the Lakers. But he, I think he was dealt a bad hand, and the Kings are starting to wake up, but the damage is already done. They're so far out of the playoff race to even get into the play-in tournament. Yeah, that it's just a matter of, okay, who are we keeping for next year? Who are we going to trade? Marvin Bagley, like you mentioned, is one of those players. Harrison Barnes is definitely going to stay. I don't see how you justify moving Harrison Barnes after the year he's having, and especially the chemistry he's built with those two young guards. So at this point, you just got to figure out, okay, who can we bring in, and is Luke Walton the right guy? I don't think he might be the right guy, but
probably not.
It is.
I mean, the damage is already done with Luke Walton there in Sacramento. You know, like the organization.
He needs to go coach college basketball, Luke Walton.
Yeah, I feel like Luke
because
Walton,
I think this pressure was too much for him.
Yeah, and I don't think he's a bad coach. No, you know, I think, just like you said.
Yeah,
I think he was dealt a shitty hand.
Yeah, in both situations, in the Lakers and with the Kings.
You can almost get a point right now that the team's overachieving under Luke Walton. Like, nobody thought that they would even be competitive right now. You know, like, I mean, not saying they're competitive, but you know, I thought they would win somewhere between 10 to 18 games.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have the exact. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. I don't have their exact win amount right now in front of me, but I'm pretty sure they have more wins at this point than I thought they would. Yeah, they got 22 wins. More wins than I thought they would finish with.
I mean, UNC, Roy Williams just retired from UNC basketball, but I'd try to go to UNC if I was Luke Walton. That's a big-time program with NBA-ready players. So you can definitely develop your system. You can work on your recruitment. You can work on a lot of things going to a school like UNC. Now, would UNC hire you? I'm not sure, because that's going to be a long coaching list for coaches that want to coach that UNC Tar Heel team.
Yeah, and you're almost more likely to understand. It's probably going to be a player who played for UNC.
Yeah,
or at least coached under Williams, you know, to take over. It was almost like I anticipate a Dukean to take over once Coach K.
When Coach K is done.
You know, like it just would be weird if they did not. You know, I don't think Luke Walton. I think he's a UCLA guy. Luke Walton is.
Yeah, he could be, but I don't see UCLA letting go of their head coach because
not after that final.
That buzzer beater. There was nothing you could have done for that Suggs. That Terrell Suggs, not Terrell Suggs. I'm thinking of football. I know his last name Suggs. That Suggs buzzer beater. There's nothing you could have done to prevent that. I thought it was going to go to overtime.
Double
overtime. And Gonzaga just, oof. Anyway, moving on. Lastly, but not least, the MLB baseball season has started this past weekend. Opening day is now upon us. Sadly for the Mets and the Nationals, they had to get postponed because multiple Nationals players tested positive for COVID. Yeah. So Francisco Lindor can't show off his shiny new contract that he got with the Queens natives of the New York Metropolitans. But the Yankees are having a lot of pressure, as you YouTube viewers are well aware. I'm wearing my Yankees gear, full Yankeed out. They lost the opening day series against the Blue Jays. They're down 2-1, I believe. But it's been a little spotty. Aaron Judge, even though he got his teeth straightened out, he can't seem to be. He wants to hit the home run every pitch, it seems like. Giancarlo is playing better, but Gary Sanchez has emerged as a home run monster. But the thing with Gary Sanchez is I believe he's going to have a good year. I believe he's going to have one of his best years this year.
They need that. They
need it to win the World Series. But if all that happens, if Gary Sanchez has a great year, if Gary Sanchez is one of the primary reasons that the Yankees make it to the World Series and win the World Series, the Yankees should not re-sign Gary Sanchez.
No,
because this is that Joe Flacco fluke contract year where
you've seen enough of Gary Sanchez to know what he is.
Because this everyone's in the know. Aaron Boone knows we're not going to re-sign him. We're just playing him because no one else wants to pick him up in a trade. Gary Sanchez knows, well, they're going to move me because they don't want to re-sign me, even though I'm the best catcher in baseball, which is a complete lie.
He's the worst defensive catcher in all of baseball.
But in his brain, he believes he's the best catcher in baseball. So he's out to prove himself in the contract year.
I mean, he can think that.
If the Yankees don't sign him, someone else can sign him to a long-term deal in the trade. Because that's all that Gary Sanchez is doing. The big concern for me right now, though, is that bullpen for the Yankees. Bullpen is still an issue. I'm still not too confident in Aroldis Chapman as the closer because last year he really started to come apart. And he gave up he blew a lot of saves, cost the Yankees a lot of games. And the Yankees right now, they're not the home run, they're not Yankee bombers. They're pretty much we'll win 3-1 games, maybe 4-2, but we're not going to blow you out of the water with home runs like they used to. We're going to do the analytics and get the best players out there who can get on base, who can get the hits, get the guys home, best chance. And luckily, they do have DJ LeMahieu back. Gio Urshela he's playing just as well as he was last year, but I'm a little concerned about my Yankees.
The Yankees, I feel, are in. I'm trying to think of the word to put it. They're in an interesting situation. Let's start with here. DJ LeMahieu probably is the best overall player on the team. Now, I'm a Judge guy. I would ride for Judge.
I got a Judge shirt on.
I have a Judge jersey upstairs. I believe he's legit. I believe he's probably the second best Yankee outside of DJ LeMahieu.
Yeah.
It's just everything that DJ does, he does well. Aaron Judge is primarily a home run hitter, but he can get on base. It's not like all he does is hit home runs. He can get on base. Mm-hmm. Problem is they have two guys in their lineup, in Giancarlo Stanton and Gary Sanchez, who are home runs or bust. Yep. Essentially, if they're not hitting dingers, they're not doing nothing for you. And Giancarlo Stanton I think this is it from Giancarlo. I don't think he comes back a Yankee next year if he does not rekindle some of that Miami magic that got him to be a Yankee. And same with Gary Sanchez. I don't even think anything Gary Sanchez can do at this point, anything short of hitting like 16 home runs and driving in 195 runs.
500 batting average.
To save him from not being a Yankee next year. There's a lot of catchers coming up in their farming system that they feel comfortable with going with now.
Yes.
As we've seen Gary Sanchez DH a lot, in the last 2 years. Because we have other catchers, who can get this job done behind the plate that we don't have to. Now, are they the bat Gary Sanchez is? Probably not. But, like I said, I just mentioned Gary Sanchez is his home run or bust.
Yeah.
So you're telling me he's a one-player tool. It's a home run or bust, and he can't even field properly. He seems more like a Big Papi to me. Now, Big Papi a lot better because Big Papi can get on base. He hit home runs. He was a patient swinger as well. Gary Sanchez is a very aggressive swinger. He chases a lot of pitches. The scouting report was Gary Sanchez is. You don't have to put it in the strike zone for Gary Sanchez to swing the bat.
He will swing at anything you throw at him. It could be well away from the strike zone. It could be up and away. It's just wherever he will swing because he wants to be that hero.
If the Yankees are facing a pitcher who primarily throws a lot of sliders and a lot of changeups, you notice. You'll notice Gary Sanchez is a lot deeper in that batting order than what he normally is, and that's because they know, all right, you can't rely on him to get on base early because he's going to swing at a lot of wild pitches.
Yeah.
Now where I think the Yankees can go right is Ronald Chapman isn't back yet. Mm-hmm. So when we're still waiting for him to return. Once he returns, although he struggles, he brings some solidification to that bullpen. At least you can turn the ball. You can turn the ball to Ronald Chapman. Yeah. Now, will you be on the pins? Is he Mariano Rivera? No. Yeah. But you knew was Mariano Rivera. You was probably never going to have a closer that great, for at least a period of time.
It's incredible that they were able to get a guy like Aroldis Chapman so soon after Rivera's retirement.
Yes, exactly. It was almost like if, you fell on gold. Because it was like, okay, like, wow. Okay.
You mean the closer that goes for 100 miles per hour each pitch?
Pitch, yeah. Sure, not Mariano's cutter, but it'll do.
Yeah.
Now where I think the Yankees went wrong was signing Darren O'Day. Darren O'Day is a journeyman at this point, and he struggles. I was watching the game yesterday, Jordan. He doesn't throw hard enough.
Yeah.
Nor does he throw a great slider or changeup for you to, justify him being your mid relief.
Mm-hmm.
I would have much preferred them went after. I can't even think of a pitcher off the top of my head, but if they could have went for at least another guy who at least is a power pitcher or has a great breaking ball, because Darren O'Day is a side-arming fastball two-seamer guy, and he's not striking nobody out. He's not. Darren O'Day is supposed to ground people up. Theoretically, that's what you signed him to do.
Yeah.
Ground people out. He doesn't do that effectively. As you've seen yesterday, George, they pulled him early. And they were like, you know what?
Yeah.
We see all we need to see out of you. You struggle to get 3 outs. You threw like 38 pitches in the inning.
Yeah. Speaking of struggles, Domingo Germán even struggled today against the Blue Jays.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the two youngest pitchers that they have struggling.
Now, the Blue Jays lineup is nothing to sneeze at. We're talking about a legit, power lineup that the Blue Jays possess. So I'm not.
And that's without George Frank.
I'm not sneezing at the lineup, but it's the simple fact that the Yankees are, as I said earlier, in an interesting situation. Now, we haven't got to see them yet, but the Nationals.
Yeah.
There's a lot of optimism that this could be Juan Soto's MVP year, which it could be. Juan Soto, one of the best players in all of baseball. We all, you see the kid, you're like, oh wow, I mean that's a baseball player. Tall guy, lean, very strong, and he hits average home runs and he still bases. He's everything you would want in your player. And then you got Turner. You brought Turner back, Max Scherzer. A lot of people are expecting to have another great year.
Strasburg is back too.
Yes, there's a lot to be happening, but I think the Atlanta Braves are going to be on a comeback tour this year, George. You remember last year when I said the Atlanta Braves was going to shock a lot of people, and I had them. I think I had them losing in a last year. I'll have to go back to our predictions, but I think I had them there.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that this year. They're not the Hunties anymore. They are the hunted. They're the team you're hunting now if you're in the NL. But the Mets, with the signing of Francisco Lindor to go with Pete, to go with the pitching staff that they have already.
Yeah, and they have Carlos Carrasco involved in that trade as well. And he's healthy. He can be dominant.
Much like the Knicks did in basketball, the Mets have built a foundation in baseball to where they now have a core unit that we can say now. Now, what they were missing was that big-time free agent splash that they signed in Francisco Lindor. And I remember, George, when free agency was getting ready to oppose and we were having discussions of should the Yankees go after Francisco Lindor or should they just make sure they sign DJ LeMahieu back? There was a lot of What should the Yankees do? What should the Mets do? What's Francisco Lindor's asking price? And we've seen he got paid big dollar amount to go to the Mets.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you what this does for the Mets. It solidifies that batting unit.
Yes, it does.
You know, it now adds insurance to Pete Alonso to no longer where Pete's on deck. You know, you're not thinking, well, as long as Pete don't kill us.
And that was their issues last year, which is why they struggled last year, because it was all on Pete. Because even though they had players on, they had guys on base. Pete Alonso had all that pressure because they know if Pete doesn't get them home, no one will.
Yeah. Nobody else would. Now you can be like, okay, Pete, you don't have to worry about that. Francisco can bring us home, which he's done a lot in Cleveland. Brought a lot of people home. Yeah, and he can lead off. He could bat third. You know, like he's a versatile guy. You can put him basically anywhere you want to put him in your lineup. He's a great glove. Yeah, so you're not worried about him defensively. There's a lot of this. I think this season's going to be interesting because a lot of people, even the Dodgers the other day, had a close game with the Rockies, and the Rockies are not nearly the team that they once were after moving Trevor Story.
Not since the Arenado trade.
Yeah,
Rockies have not been good. And that lineup is not what it used to be.
No, not in the slightest. Like I said, no more Trevor Story. You just mentioned. Yep. They also Arenado. They moved some people, and I mean the Dodgers. They essentially brought back House and they brought Corey in. Yep. So now we're talking about arms to go with more bats that they already have. So the Dodgers were just getting richer. Essentially, it was like, the rich just keeps getting richer. But anyone short of the Marlins, I don't expect the Marlins to be good. That's a team that I just expect to be trash.
They have a great player in Starling Marte.
Starling Marte has been a good player now for years. Yeah. He's a good player, but like he's not.
Outside of that, there really hasn't been much to go home about with the Marlins.
It's sad to say, but since the death of Jose Hernandez, you go back to the death of Jose Hernandez and think, well, how different would the Miami Marlins be if they had that ace still there? Not only was he a great ace, he was a bat for a pitcher. He wasn't a sure out. He was a feisty batter as well. So, I mean, it hurt. That's why I was still taken back. I remember when the news broke of his death. I was just like, man, that kid. He had the world in it. Like he was going to be rivaling Jacob DeGrom for the best pitcher in baseball.
Basically,
it was going to be him and Jacob, and now it's just all Jacob. It's all Jacob all the time, I tell you, the Padres are scary. The Padres are
through this offseason. They're looking because they made the playoffs for the first time last year in a long time. And it finally showed last year that, these free agent moves we've made are finally paying off because they made the playoffs. This year, the Padres are looking like they can challenge the Dodgers for that ring, that division. The Rays may struggle a bit because they did lose their star pitcher to the Dodgers. So they're out in ace, even though they have, I think, really the same lineup that they had last year in the World Series.
For the most part.
But the pitching, the rotation is a bit messed up. But going back to the Mets real quick, my concern isn't because they have the pitching, they have the hitting now. Who's going to close? Because if you watch the Mets games, Familia is listed as their closer, but he hasn't really sealed the deal as a closer.
He doesn't. He is no longer La Familia. 3 years, 4 years ago when he was the best closer.
Yeah, then you can justify it, but that time is gone far away. But you also have Betances on that roster as well. And Betances does have closing ability. So the biggest question with the Mets is who's going to close? Are you going to give it to Familia again and just cross your fingers and hope to the high heavens that he doesn't do the Mets Familia things and cost games? Or do you just roll the dice with Betances?
A lot of people are pointing to Edwin Diaz.
He had some closing sessions last year.
you know, a lot of people point to him to possibly close out games for the Mets and capable. You know,
Yeah, definitely.
he's capable. But when does the Mets relinquish the reins and give him that? You know, like, okay, you're a
That's the problem.
solidified closer.
Yeah.
You know, at least give him a stretch to see. Maybe you move Familia to the setup role, where maybe you take some of the pressure off of him, where he's not asked to no longer close out games. He's asking get Edwin to the ninth. You know,
Yeah.
just
Get him to
you know,
the
get Edwin and then see if he closes it out.
And you could really have a nice situation where you have Betances pitching seventh, Familia in the eighth inning, and then have Diaz close it out in the
Close the
ninth.
game.
Because you know Betances, his arm is deadly, and he can get guys out like it's no tomorrow. Knowing me as a Yankees fan, seeing what Betances did, Familia, when the pressure's not on him to close, if you just tell him to set the man up for the ninth inning, he can get it done. And Diaz showed last year he has the capabilities of being your everyday closer.
Closer, yeah. He considers himself that.
Yeah.
You know, he considers himself the closer. He knows if the game matters, he's the one they're going to ask, close them out. You know, get us these outs. And it's funny because I was talking to I was at Amanda's family function yesterday, and we were talking about closers when they're asked to pitch more than 3 innings, when they're asked to get more than 3 outs.
Yeah.
How does it weigh on them? And I'm like, you know what? That's where I look at the Dodgers situation with Jared. His name escapes me, but I want to say Jensen. I don't know if he's still over there. But I believe he doesn't struggle to get multiple outs. Arado Chapman, if they're on, can get you more than 3 outs.
Yeah.
And I look at Edwin Diaz as well. He can get you more than just 3 outs if need be.
Yeah.
You know, in the perfect world, because I when I was talking to them, I was like, you know what? If you're a closer, you can't go in with the mindset get 3 outs. Your mindset is do what it takes to win the game.
Yeah.
If you give a run out, you give the run out.
Yeah.
You know,
as long as the lead is still intact, that's all that matters.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just don't fumble the lead.
Yep.
And that's what made the great closers, the Jonathan Papelbons, obviously the Mariano Rivera's, the Jensens that I mentioned earlier. All the great closers of our lifetime had that short switch. You know, they knew to if Sergio Ruiz for us when he closed out the game for us and on the Giants. Like short memory. You just go out there and give up a run short, whatever.
Yeah.
Get the outs. Follow up. Don't get shaken. And I love Diaz because Familia. I feel like once he gives up a hit, he becomes shaky. If Familia starts worrying too much. Oh damn! I put him on base. And he almost starts worrying about what the base runner's doing than executing the pitches. Familia in his heyday was hitting 100 miles per hour, 99. He was a hammer and he had that beautiful. I want to say it was a slider he threw. That was just absolutely devastating.
Yes.
When he was closing people out.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, he lost some of the velocity just a little bit. He's still pretty much on my hand, but he lost some of the velocity. And he doesn't seem to have the control he had earlier. So I wonder if you're the Mets, do you even consider trying to maybe, if you don't think Diaz is your guy, do you go try to get somebody who you think can become your everyday closer? If you don't think you have them in-house now, because you don't want to figure out in October that Diaz is not your closer. You don't want to figure that out then. You want to figure that out before then. You want to figure that out at the trade deadline when it's time to go get your closer.
And that all depends on where they are in the trade deadline too, because if Lindor is just hitting it out of the park, because the Citi Field is a hitter-friendly ballpark. So a lot of home runs can be hit there. A lot of runs can be had. It's not really meant for pitchers, even though guys like DeGrom strive.
That speaks volume to how good Noah Syndergaard and Jacob DeGrom was Noah Syndergaard was. Jacob DeGrom is. The great pitchers.
Zach Wheeler when he was on the Mets.
Zach Wheeler.
Yeah, and now he's in the Phillies, but just speaking to them.
He was dealing yesterday. Mm-hmm. My gosh, what they made.
Oh, my goodness.
I was like, huh? What's going on there? You're actually good now?
But that closer position, I think, is what's going to get the Mets over the hump because they have everything else. They have the starting rotation. They have the lineup. They just closing it out because because in that division with the Phillies and now the Braves, well, not the Braves, but the Nationals. Those two teams those are the games where you're going to have maybe a 1-2 run lead at the most, and that could cost you either the division lead or your spot in the wild card.
Yeah.
So that's really a position, and it's a shame that their series had to be postponed because we won't know until later this week how that closing situation is going to be because we haven't seen the Mets or the Nationals play, so we haven't seen anything like that.
What's the over under that Jacob DeGrom wins another Cy Young this year?
Oh, it's guaranteed. I think it's all but guaranteed.
Yeah.
Things all but guaranteed. But I think that's is there another baseball team you want to talk about real quick before we end things off?
I'm interested to see what other people think of the probability of the St. Louis Cardinals being back in the thick of things this year.
With Nolan Arenado in the lineup now. Jack Flaherty had a shaky opening day start, and I only know that because he's in my fantasy. So Flaherty, if you're watching or listening, just step it up, buddy. I need to win. I need to win my money for my fantasy league. But regardless, he still got the win. I think he finished the game with a 2.5 ERA.
Something like that.
So it was a good start for their ace, but it's really going to be interesting how the Arenado effect takes place because that's really the X factor in the success of the Cardinals because they made it to the playoffs. They made it to the NLDS. It's just getting past the Dodgers that's going to be the question. And
the Braves now.
We're going to see a lot of NLCS possible previews, NLDS possible previews this season because they're in the same division. And it's going to be very interesting because I believe Yadier Molina's back as their catcher. Yeah. They have pretty much the same group with Arenado added into the mix.
And everyone knows how great he is.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, what a pickup by the Cardinals. They could be a dark horse World Series pick depending on what happens when they play the Dodgers. Because that's what I'm very interested to see in the regular season series how that shapes out. Because the Dodgers are still
with the Padres. Where do you think they match up with the Padres?
They match up well with the Padres, I think. But it's those regular season series that come middle of the season around the deadline, around All-Star. That's when, depending on where they are, that's when we're going to see, okay, are the Cardinals legit? Or are they just the third child to the Dodgers and Padres as they fight it out?
Padres, yeah.
So that's going to be an interesting team to keep an eye on. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Off the Bench Pod. We do a lot of Instagram lives now, don't you know? So if you follow us on Instagram, you will find our link tree where you will find every single way you can listen or watch us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can even find us on Facebook. So make sure you follow us on Instagram at Off the Bench Pod. You YouTube viewers are going to see it at the bottom right hand over here, maybe under Roland. But thank you guys so much for listening. We're glad to be back with another edition of the Off the Bench podcast. Take care.